I wanted to understand what the Marxist versus the capitalist definition of profits and losses.
Okay, sure.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Uh, so there, it's kind of a false conflict because in Marx's time, he was working off of the writings of the liberal economists of his time in political economy, and they were trying to understand capitalism or the political economy in a kind of objective way, and so they were trying to understand what is profit, like how is profit, how does that come into being. And a lot of today's breadtube are trying to say, oh, Marx was saying that capitalists are just stealing it from the workers, but
Yes,
that's a
I
very
hear that argument
morally
all the time.
charged, that's a very morally charged claim. What Marx meant was that profit profit was the realized form of a type of collective labor, but it's not like it's directly being stolen, because profit is the only way that labor is being given expression. So, but what
Hmm.
Marx was concerned with was how it is that because of this paradox between how money is made and the real material conditions that make that possible, how that gives rise to crisis and contradictions in capitalism that lead to overproduction and falling rates of profit across the board. Um,
Yeah, this is a phenomenon that what happens is that you see the capitalist view of profit is a little bit different because we view profit as coming from the customers.
yeah.
Because,
No, no.
I mean, hypothetically, let's say you were to,
Yeah.
I've said this before, but let's say you were to purchase your wife
Yeah.
$100 purse. Okay, let's say your wife was to buy $100 purse. Okay, and she thinks it's a good deal. But now let's say the purse is $102, is she still going to buy the purse? Of course, most likely she's still going to buy it.
Yeah.
But there gets to a point where the purse gets to a certain price where it's no longer worth it to her.
Right, right. Of
It
course,
might
of
be
course.
110, it might be
For
115,
yeah.
whatever that number is. So
Yeah, yeah.
the
For
thing is, that
Marx,
number is called consumer surplus.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
consumer.
But for
And with,
Marx,
so,
when supply and demand kicks in, like how you're describing, um, even then, there's something going on under the surface of all of that, which is the real material conditions that gives things their wealth. Under the surface of all of that, like, um, that's kind of the thing. It's like the money comes from the consumer, but
yeah, the consumer is being overcharged,
right,
and they don't mind because
yeah,
if I'm buying a purse, and it costs me $5 extra,
hmm,
well, the money that I'm paying extra is not coming from the workers who made the purse. It's coming from the customer who paid
yeah.
a higher price for the purse than what it cost to produce.
Yeah,
So
but what Marx was trying to say was that there's a there's a something under the surface that's actually giving value to all of these things. The purse is a kind of complicated example because that's more of a consumer good, right? But in Marx's
yes,
time, he was dealing with He was dealing with subsistence, more so subsistence. Like for example, the types of things being produced for modernization.
railroads and
Yeah, shit
container
like that. Yeah,
ships
yeah.
and
Things that weren't
factories
for,
and yeah,
because when you bring personal consumption into the game, then you're talking about advertising, then you're talking about the attention economy. And Marxists haven't really
yes,
done a good job dealing with all that kind of stuff. We deal with it, we understand it, but
yes.
they shouldn't be confused, because they're related, but it's not quite the same thing. But just the basic idea is that there is a material force that is behind the creation of wealth that is not it's not only the at the level of the buying and the selling and the prices. Like there's a
Okay,
yeah,
yes. So there's material forces that lead to these people buying and selling these items at specific quantities and specific prices, and the
yeah,
material
yeah,
conditions is what like
pretty much, yeah, yeah,
as time goes on, because we look at it as subjective value theory. So
mm-hmm.
it's that human beings are complex, and there's certain things that you just can't put down on paper. Like it's human beings are just we're spiritual beings,
Yeah,
and I can't understand why a woman would pay $100 for a purse because to
You're
me it's
right.
worth zero
Yeah.
dollars.
But
But people
even
have
yeah,
different values, value of goods and
yeah.
services.
But
So it's the same thing when it comes to capital goods, whether
yeah.
it's a factory, whether
Hmm.
it's a farm, whether it's a
Yeah.
supply line.
Here's
These, sorry.
here's how I would put it. Even when we allow for like the really complicated reasons why people want purses, why people want this, at the end of the day, reality is going to kick in, and you're going to have to realize those things are economic. How are purses made? How are things like that made? You know what I'm saying? And that's going to factor into the uh, how that's going to reflect. That's going to be the source of the value, basically. You know, the origin of what makes those possible. You know, reality is a combination of the subjective and the objective, right? The
Exactly.
extent of our
Exactly.
ability to dream is grounded in reality. Like
So the
reality
purse
is
has an objective value, but it also has a subjective value.
yeah,
The objective
exactly.
value could be the materials that went into the purse. The subjective value is whatever the woman in her brain thinks the purse is worth, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's both. It's two sides of the same coin, in a weird way.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah. It's
you're right
like
about that.
yeah, yeah. That's what Marx is dealing with basically. He's not denying that subjective aspect, but he's just trying to ask what's the objective type of things going on, right? And for
Yes.
Marx, where Marx comes into it is basically he's saying it's not just the natural things that are going into it. There's a human aspect, and he's viewing that human aspect as the labor, our human labor, right, as human beings. But
Yes.
but labor today is so complicated. It's so different now, right? Because now workers are very different than they were in the 19th century, right? It's all so different now. Our
Much, much
theories
different. Yeah.
are maybe you'd be interested in our kind of ideas, right? Because to me, for example, producing labor. This is going to trigger some people in the chat because not everyone agrees with me. But producing labor, or sorry, labor can't you can't just say the workplace is the only place where you're engaging in labor because what we're consuming and what we're looking at, even what we're giving our attention to, where we're living, what stores we go to buy groceries, what's our daily grind, what's our daily routines. All of those things are creating data, and that data
Hmm.
is valuable. Is the new, currency, that data.
Exactly.
So this daily grind we go through in our lives as human beings, in a way that we're not even aware of, we're that's a type of labor. We're creating something.
Yeah, because it's being monetized by somebody else.
Yeah,
Somebody else is
yeah,
looking at your patterns, where you drive, what's your favorite website, and then they try to advertise or try to create something that maybe you might be able to purchase because
yeah.
they know you so well now.
Yeah, yeah. And that allows you to understand what Marx was trying to come at, but in 19th century, it's similar, right? It's very similar for Marx, but there wasn't any computers or internet in Marx's time, and it wasn't an information economy, but ultimately it's pretty much the same thing. Price interfaces with labor value in a very similar way,
Yes.
for Marx. So I think, you know, I really know where you're coming from, honest to God, I do, because if only the current like leftists and Marxists were the only people I ever heard of, I'd be 100% like exactly would not be a Marxist or anything like that. But all I want to tell you is that they're not. Don't let them only represent us, because there's other kind of perspectives.
Yes. I'm surprised because I never knew about this community until maybe like 3 days ago. But I thought Twitter was the Vosh people. I thought that's what it was like. The
Nah,
people
bro.
on the Marxist-Leninist side. This is how they were. They were a bunch of Vosh fans.
Nah, bro.
And
We completely coming from somewhere else.